You think you're broke because you can't bench 300 pounds. But the truth is you're staying small because you're too arrogant to pick up the pennies. Arnold didn't build the greatest physique in history by chasing the dollar. He built it using the penny theory. And until you understand it, you will never grow. Walk into any commercial gym today, and you will see something fascinating. You won't see animalistic intensity. You won't see focus. You will see calculation. You see guys resting for exactly 180 seconds because a study they read on a forum said it optimizes ATP regeneration. They have spreadsheets, specialized apps, heart rate monitors, and they are spending 20 minutes debating the optimal angle of pinky rotation for the upper inner chest. We are living in the golden age of information, but the dark age of results. Because while everyone is obsessed with finding the perfect scientific formula, they are missing the obvious reality staring them in the face. Transport yourself back to Gold's Gym, Venice Beach, 1974, the Mecca. There were no spreadsheets. There was no air conditioning. There were no biomechanics experts with PhDs analyzing vector forces on a whiteboard. And there certainly wasn't a PubMed abstract in sight. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Franco Columbu, Ed Corney, they didn't have the science. They had something far more dangerous. They had intuition. And if you look at the grainy, raw footage from Pumping Iron, you notice something immediately. They didn't just look big, they looked different. There is a specific quality to the golden era physiques that seems to have vanished from the modern world. They had a density, a deep, etched graininess to the muscle that looked like it was carved out of granite. Today, you see guys who are technically huge, but they look puffy, they look inflated, like they are wearing a muscle suit filled with water. They look like they were built in a lab, not forged in a dungeon. So the question you have to ask yourself is this: if we have all the science, all the optimal machines, and all the supplements, why do the guys from 50 years ago still look better than us? The answer isn't steroids, and it isn't genetics. It is a lost philosophy. We call it the penny theory. And frankly, it is the reason you are still small. Here is the cold, hard truth. Modern fitness culture is obsessed with the dollar. You want the big payout. You want to add 45 pounds to your bench press in a month. You want to see visual changes in the mirror by next Tuesday. You are chasing the dollar bills because they are flashy, they feed your ego, and they make for great social media posts. But the body does not understand the economy of the dollar. The body is a biological organism that fights change with every cell it has. The penny theory states that the smallest unit of progression, the one so tiny that most of you ignore it because it looks uncool, is actually the only currency the body accepts. Arnold didn't build the greatest physique in history by chasing the dollar. He built it by obsessively, psychopathically collecting pennies. A penny is small. It's almost worthless on its own. If you saw a penny on the dirty gym floor, you probably wouldn't even bend over to pick it up. And that is exactly your problem. You are too arrogant to pick up the pennies. The golden era legends understood that the gap between good and great isn't a single massive leap. It is the accumulation of thousands of microscopic victories that the modern lifter thinks are beneath him. While you are trying to maximize your return on investment with the perfect workout split, Arnold was banking pennies that you don't even know exist. But here is the good news. Once you stop trying to get rich quick and you start looking for these pennies, the growth becomes automatic. It becomes inevitable. You might think you know what I'm talking about. You think I mean add 5 pounds to the bar. No, that is still too big. That is a nickel, maybe a dime. I am talking about things much smaller and much harder to do. By minute 20 of this video, I am going to show you the specific math Arnold used to trick his brain. A psychological trick 99% of you are skipping, which is mathematically guaranteeing your failure. But first, we have to look at why your ego is currently bankrupting your gains. Let's be honest about what happens when you walk into a modern gym. It looks less like a place of serious work and more like a nightclub with dumbbells. You have neon lights, high-energy playlists, and everyone is performing for an imaginary audience. In this environment, the ego is the loudest voice in the room. You see a guy next to you slapping two 45-pound plates on the bar, and suddenly your brain panics. You feel small. You feel poor. So, what do? You reach for the big plates. You want the dollar bill. You want to flash the cash and show everyone that you belong. This is the trap of inflation. In the modern gym economy, we are obsessed with the big numbers because they stroke our ego immediately. You convince yourself that if you aren't adding 45 pounds to your lift every month, you are failing. But let's look at your bench press. Be honest. You aren't lifting that weight. You are bouncing it off your chest like a trampoline. You are arching your back so hard you look like a bridge. You are recruiting your shoulders, your hips, and probably your neighbor's spotter just to move the bar from point A to point B. You are chasing the dollar bill, but you are paying for it with credit card debt in the form of torn rotators and stagnation. You are spending all your energy trying to look strong, rather than saving that energy for the growth stimulus. Now, let's leave the neon lights and go back to the dungeon, the golden era. Gold's Gym in the 70s was dark. It smelled like rust and sweat, and nobody cared how rich you looked. They only cared about the investment. The guys in that era, the ones who built the densest muscle we have ever seen, were not afraid to look weak. This brings us to the most counterintuitive truth of the penny theory. While you are obsessed with the 45-pound plates, Arnold and his crew were obsessed with the small metal donuts that you probably ignore, the 1.25-pound plates, the pennies. Think about how arrogant you have to be to refuse a small gain. You walk past those tiny plates because they look uncool. You think, I'm a man, I don't add 2 pounds, I add 20. And that is why you have been stuck at the same bench press weight for 3 years. The Golden Era legends understood that the body is a biological organism, not a calculator. It hates sudden changes. If you throw a dollar bill at it, it panics and fights back with injury. But if you sneak a penny onto the bar, just a tiny, barely noticeable increase, the body doesn't notice. It adapts. It accepts the currency. And over a year, those pennies turn into a fortune. There is a story that perfectly captures this difference in mindset. It was the mid-70s and Arnold was training chest. He watched a young guy load up a barbell with way more weight than he could handle. The guy unranked it, his arms were shaking, his face turned purple, and he swung the weight up using every muscle fiber in his body except his chest. He racked the weight, stood up, and puffed out his chest, looking for validation. Arnold just looked at him, calm as ever, and delivered one of the most brutal reality checks in bodybuilding history. He said, "The muscle doesn't know you own the weight. It only knows you are renting it." Let that sink in for a second. When you ego lift, when you use momentum and bad form just to move a heavy number, you are only renting that weight. You are borrowing it from gravity for a split second, but you aren't owning the tension. The muscle doesn't grow from the number painted on the side of the plate. It grows from the time it spends under tension. Arnold didn't care if he was benching 300 or 500 pounds if he couldn't feel every single ounce of it tearing the fibers. He would rather lift lighter and own every millimeter of the movement than lift heavy and just rent the glory. So here is your wake-up call. You need to stop spending your energy on looking strong for the other people in the gym. They don't care about you. You need to start saving your energy for the muscle. You need to humble yourself, strip the bar down, and start looking for the pennies. You need to become the guy who isn't afraid to put the little 2.5-pound plates on the bar, week after week. Because while the guy next to you is chasing the dollar and snapping his tendons, you will be slowly, quietly banking the gains that actually stay. But adding weight is only the physical penny. The mental penny is much harder to find, and it's where the real size is hiding. So you have accepted that you need to check your ego at the door. You are ready to stop ego lifting and start micro-loading. But here is the bad news. Adding a 1.25-pound plate to the bar is the easy part. That is the physical penny. Anyone can do that. The reason Arnold Schwarzenegger became a mythical figure while you are struggling to fill out a medium t-shirt isn't just about the metal he lifted. It is about what was happening inside his head while he lifted it. This brings us to the mental penny. And trust me, this one is much harder to find. We need to talk about delusional confidence. If you listen to Arnold speak about his training in the 70s, he sounds less like an athlete and more like a mental patient. He famously said that when he was curling, he wasn't just visualizing his biceps getting bigger. He was visualizing them as mountains, massive peaks that would fill the entire room. Now, when you curl, what are you visualizing? Probably your lunch, or the girl on the treadmill, or how many reps you have left until you can go home and play video games. This is the fundamental disconnect. You view the set as a chore, a task list to be checked off. Arnold viewed the set as a reality distortion field. He truly believed in that moment that his arms were growing to the size of buildings. This might sound funny to you, but your nervous system cannot tell the difference between a vivid visualization and reality. By convincing his brain that the demand was mountainous, his body had no choice but to construct the foundation to support it. But let's bring this down to earth. You don't need to hallucinate mountains to use the penny theory. You just need to change your definition of a rep. Most of you think a rep is moving a weight from point A to point B. You think if the dumbbell goes up and comes down, you did the work. You are wrong. That is simple mechanics. A forklift can move a weight from A to B. A crane can do it. You are not a crane. You are an artist building a sculpture. The mental penny is hidden in the space between the movement. It is the 0.5 seconds at the very top of the rep. Look at the way you train. You push the weight up, and the second it gets hard, you drop it back down to catch the rebound. You are robbing yourself. You are throwing away the pennies. The penny mindset asks a different question. Did you squeeze the apex of the rep for half a second longer than you did last time? That half-second squeeze, that is the penny. It feels insignificant. It feels annoying. It burns, and it makes you look ugly in the facial expression department. But that half-second is where the signal is sent. That is the moment you tell your body, we are not just surviving this weight, we are dominating it. If you watch the slow-motion footage of Arnold, you will see it. He isn't just surviving the set. He is hunting for the pain. He is looking for that specific spot in the range of motion where the tension is highest. And instead of rushing through it like you do, he stays there. He lives there. He collects the penny that you are too busy rushing to skip. Try this mental trick the next time you are in the gym. Instead of thinking about lifting the weight, imagine your muscle is a balloon inflating inside a small room. With every inch the weight moves, the balloon gets bigger, pressing against the walls, cracking the plaster, filling every cubic inch of space. It sounds abstract, but suddenly you aren't just pushing a bar, you are creating internal pressure. There is a line that perfectly summarizes the difference between the golden era greats and the modern gym goer. You are moving the weight, but Arnold was feeling the weight. That is the difference between exercise and training. Exercise is checking a box. Training is a visceral, focused act of communication with your own biology. So before you add more weight to the bar, ask yourself if you have actually earned the right to progress. Have you collected the mental pennies from your current weight? Can you feel every fiber contracting, or are you just flinging metal around hoping for a miracle? Because if you can't feel the muscle working with 20 pounds, you certainly won't feel it with 50. You will just be a guy with a heavy dumbbell and a very small bicep. But let's say you have the physical penny and you have the mental penny. You might think you need a fancy gym to cash them in. You think you need the Matrix-style machines and the $5,000 cardio equipment. Well, you are wrong again. In fact, your fancy gym might be the very thing stealing your gains. You might think that to apply the penny theory, to really squeeze every ounce of value out of your training, you need a high-end facility. You see the influencers on social media training in laboratories that look like they belong to NASA, with machines that have ergonomic leather seats, digital rep counters, and cup holders for your intra-workout carbohydrates. You convince yourself that the reason you are small is that your gym doesn't have that specific isolateral row machine from Germany. Let me stop you right there. That fancy machine is not the solution to your problem. That machine is a pickpocket. It is stealing your pennies right out of your pocket while you are sitting there smiling. We call this next principle the toolkit of poverty. If you look back at the footage of the golden era, you don't see sophisticated engineering. You see iron, gravity, and rust. Arnold, Franco, and the rest of the crew built the greatest physiques in human history using equipment that most modern safety inspectors would condemn. They didn't have wealth in terms of equipment, but they became rich in muscle because they understood a fundamental truth that modern marketing has tried to hide from you. Comfort is the enemy of growth. Modern gyms are designed to sell memberships, not to build muscle. They are designed to be comfortable, safe, and easy. But the penny theory relies on instability. It relies on the struggle. When you sit in a chest press machine, the machine is doing the stabilizing for you. It balances the weight. It dictates the path of motion. It ensures you cannot fail. By doing this, the machine is paying the stability tax on your behalf. But in bodybuilding, you want to pay that tax yourself. You want to pay it with your stabilizer muscles, your core, and your nervous system. Every time a machine stabilizes a weight for you, it is robbing you of the micro-trauma and the neurological density that builds that thick, three-dimensional look. Think about the T-bar row. In the 70s, this wasn't a chest-supported machine with a comfortable pad. It was a barbell shoved into a corner with a V-handle hooked around it. When Arnold performed a T-bar row, his hamstrings were screaming to keep him upright. His spinal erectors were fighting to protect his back, and his lats were dragging the weight through the air. He was collecting pennies from the floor to his neck. Today, you lay your chest on a pad and just pull. You have turned a full-body symphony of tension into a simple isolation movement. You have simplified the movement, and in doing so, you have bankrupted the results. This is why the guys from the 70s looked like they were carved out of wood, while modern machine users look like they are made of balloon animal rubber. The golden era guys were forced to master the basic crude tools, the barbell curl, the bench press, the squat. These movements do not care about your comfort. They do not guide you. If you lose focus for 1 second with a heavy barbell, you get crushed. That fear, that requirement for total body tension, allows for the accumulation of pennies that machines simply cannot offer. So I have a challenge for you, a challenge that will save you money and make you muscle. For the next 4 weeks, I want you to impose a strict embargo on machines. I want you to ban them from your routine completely. No cables, no levers, no pulleys. If it doesn't involve a barbell or a dumbbell, you are not allowed to touch it. You are going to feel weaker, you are going to shake. You are going to realize just how much you have been relying on the engineering of a machine to move the weight for you. But this is good. This is you finally paying your own debts. This is you realizing that you don't need a $5,000 membership to build a $1 million body. You need the floor, you need gravity, and you need a willingness to be uncomfortable. This validates the fact that your potential is not limited by your resources, but by your resourcefulness. But having the right mindset and the right tools is useless if you don't have the method. You can have the best intentions in the world, but if you don't know how to track the currency, you will still go broke. Now that you have the tools, here is the exact 4-step checklist Arnold used to ensure he never left the gym poorer than he entered. We have arrived at the final barrier, the one excuse that destroys more potential physiques than bad nutrition and missed workouts combined. It is the whisper in the back of your head that says, "I am just a hard gainer. I have bad genetics." Let me tell you something that might hurt your feelings, but will ultimately set you free. You are not a hard gainer. You are just terrible at understanding compound interest. You look at Arnold in his prime and you see a Greek god. You assume he was born that way. You forget that he came from a small village in Austria called Thal. He didn't have access to super supplements or magical food. He was a human being with the same biology as you. The difference is that he didn't look at genetics as a brick wall. He looked at them as a hurdle. When you claim you are a hard gainer, what you are really admitting is that you lack the patience to collect the pennies. You want the lottery win. But the body does not run on a lottery system. It runs on a savings account. If you deposit 1 penny of stimulus every single day, the compound interest over 5 years is astronomical. But if you try to deposit $1 million at once, the bank freezes your account. That is what happens when you ego lift and get injured. So how do we fix this? How do we take the penny theory and turn it into a concrete action plan? We are going to distill everything we have talked about into 4 non-negotiable rules. If you apply these to a simple routine, like Arnold's classic Golden 6, you will grow. If you ignore them, you will stay exactly where you are. Rule number 1 is the micro-load. This is the discipline test. From this day forward, you are forbidden from increasing the weight on any exercise by more than 2.5 pounds at a time. I don't care if you feel like Hercules that day. I don't care if the girl you like is watching. You add the smallest plate in the gym. This ensures that you never outpace your body's ability to adapt. You are tricking your nervous system into accepting a heavier load before it realizes what is happening. Rule number 2 is the penny pause. We talked about this. Do not just bounce the weight. At the very top of the curl, the press, or the row, you must freeze. You hold the weight for a distinct half-second count. You squeeze the muscle until it feels like it is going to cramp. If you cannot hold the weight still at the top, you do not own the weight. You are stealing it. And the gym police, which is gravity, will eventually catch you. Rule number 3 is the negative. This is where most of you are literally throwing your gains into the trash. You lift the weight and then you let it drop. You just wasted 50% of the rep. The penny theory dictates that you must lower the weight slower than you lifted it. Fight the gravity. Resist the earth. That slow, painful descent is where the micro tears happen. That is where the muscle is built. If you let the weight drop, you are spending the penny without getting anything in return. Rule number 4 is the logbook. This is your bank statement. If you do not write it down, it did not happen. Arnold was meticulous. He knew exactly what he lifted last Tuesday, so he knew exactly what he needed to lift this Tuesday. If you are walking into the gym and guessing, you are gambling, and the house always wins. You need to be an accountant of your own body. Write down every rep, every set, and every tiny increase in weight. Now imagine applying these 4 rules to the Golden 6 routine: the squat, the bench press, the chin-up, the overhead press, the curl, and the sit-up. Simple exercises, but if you micro-load them, if you pause at the top, if you control the negative, and if you track every session, that simple routine becomes a weapon of mass construction. It is not about the complexity of the program. It is about the ferocity of the execution. The penny theory isn't sexy. It is not going to get you likes on Instagram tomorrow because a 2.5-pound plate doesn't look impressive on camera. But we are not here for likes. We are here for legacy. If you stack these pennies day after day, rep after rep for 5 years, you won't just look fit, you will look legendary. The choice is yours. You can keep chasing the dollar, getting injured, and staying broke. Or you can start picking up the pennies and build a fortune that no one can take away from you. So the next time you walk into the gym, I want you to do exactly